We have the amazing Pollie Rafferty. You've seen her a couple of times popping up and asking me questions. Now it's time for me to dive in with the questions. So Pollie started in 2005 with traditional storytelling, and then went on to hone her skills to help unleash the story of all those juicy business owners out there who have a desire to inspire, impact, and ignite from the stage. Pollie is the speaker's storyteller. And for those of you that know you have a story inside of you, but maybe you're not telling the story that is really connecting with your clients, we need to hear from the amazing Pollie. She is the one to go to if you want to take your story out to the world. Let's bring her out with this final song, Independent Woman. Pollie, 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 come and join us on the stage. Welcome to International Women's Day 2022. Pollie.
Hello.
It's shoes on the other foot now. I get to interrogate you.
I know, scared.
Now, what I want to know is, there are so many people out there that support people to speak and tell stories on stage. There's lists and lists of names out there of people that do it, but you're very unique in the way that you enable somebody to embrace the real story behind the story. Can you tell us about what you do and how, a little bit of the how?
I come from a traditional storytelling background, so I've learned first to connect to the story and to feel the emotion behind the story, and then to bring that out, rather than from a business side where you want to try and get the sale. The sale isn't the most important thing. It is something that happens because of the story, but it's the connection and the story that's important, because it's, even if the people in the audience or your audience aren't ready to buy right at that moment, the story is designed to stay in their mind, to leave that little seed. That's why I love dandelions so much, is because the story is a little seed that sits in the head, sits in your mind, and then slowly grows into something that's much more useful and much more empowering. So yeah, story should come from the heart. It should come from the soul and be meaningful to both the person telling the story and the person hearing the story.
Yeah, well, I'm intrigued to know, as I'm sure other people are, what's your story, Pollie?
My story is very long and very convoluted.
In 5 minutes.
in 5 minutes, in a very sharp, short thing. I always wanted to run my own business, always wanted to be my own boss. Margaret Thatcher was one of my all-time most favourite people, not with her politics, but the fact that she was such a strong woman in such a male-dominated environment, and I grew up with her as a child. So I always wanted to do more. I didn't want to do the traditional women's role, but I did want a family and a house and the kids and stuff like that. I wanted it all, really. But unfortunately, I was groomed into a relationship when I was 16 with a man who was 36, and that became violent and aggressive and very controlling and abusive. So that's had a very bad knock-on effect in my life choices as I've gone along. And there have been times where it's been the very end. I didn't want to continue, but I always have, because I'm still here. And I've slowly learned to deal with massive anxiety. I first stepped into storytelling as a final step out of crippling that anxiety that had me trapped in my own house, so I couldn't even put my own knickers on the washing line. And now I'm sat here in front of you guys. And it's just the way it's all sort of tumbled into place. And I always says to myself, while I was going through all this must be happening for a reason. It's got to be happening for a reason. And now I've found that reason, because I've got all of these areas that I can connect with people. I've been evicted from my house. I've had a postnatal depression, a premature child, all of these things that somebody in some way has had in their life. I can connect with all of these things. So my life story is full of interesting little anecdotes, really. I don't see them much more than that anymore, because I've dealt with all the trauma behind them, and I can help anybody within a situation realize that they're not alone.
Mm. I love that. Polly, for those, I mean, how many of you want to speak? Just by showing the chat there, yes, I want to speak. Let everybody know that you want to speak. Get it out in the comments there. Polly, how would you recommend that people get over the nerves of telling their story? I know there's a few people on this call. Carol, it took me like 2 years to convince Carol that ADHD was the story, and like it can be quite hard going and actually sharing your story for the first time, especially when you have all that history of being the shame of those things that have happened to you. I know there are things that I was so ashamed of those things, and then when you go and you start talking about them and other people say, oh my god, like, I'm so glad you shared that. Like, walking away from my 7.8 million pound business, I felt like the biggest fucking failure on the planet when I walked away from that. But it was like, it was breathing for me. It gave me my life back, and I was so ashamed of that, ashamed of walking away from that business, moving over to France, living with my parents again, all of those things to rehabilitate myself. And I was so deeply ashamed of all of that. And yet it's the story that is behind the story. It's the thing that people go, fuck yeah, actually I don't want to go through that, or yeah, I've been there as well. And it creates that connection. Polly, what would you say to those people that are watching this now that also are a bit nervous of sharing that story, that they know it's the one that needs to be told, but there's still some shame or guilt around that? What would you suggest?
I would suggest with everything, you need to be comfortable with the story that you're telling. If there is anything that you're feeling negative about that story, maybe you need to work a bit more on the story within yourself, change your story, change how you react to that story. We're story beings. We live for story. Everything we tell ourselves is story based. We have dominant storylines running through our lives. So if you're upset about the story and the story is not flowing for you, or you don't feel comfortable, then we just need to look at how you look at that part of the story. I felt guilty for years and years, up until a couple of years ago, about leaving home and running away with this older man, until I realized that actually I was 16 years old. I was still a child. I now work as a youth worker part-time, and I look at these 16-year-old kids and I think, my God, I was their age when I made this massive decision, and I let that guilt go, because until I let that guilt go, I was not really able to tell the story properly. And I can go, I do like to tell that story, especially to young people, because they need to know. But it's all about rephrasing how you look at the story, and what emotions are actually holding you back from stepping out and telling that story, because there is somebody out there that needs to know, that needs to hear your story. And everybody's got a story, everybody.
Yeah. And like you say, it's about being comfortable with the story you're telling, and you can kind of eke it out. But what I love about the work that you do, Polly, is that you actually take the time to work with people and do that. You have got an online program as well that supports people that maybe don't want to talk to another human being about it yet. Maybe they want to go through that process on their own first. And I love that you have that online program to facilitate that. And when people want somebody to really bounce it off and create that story with, you also do that as well. So could you share with our audience this evening, how can people get in contact with you to find out more?
Yep, the easiest way to get through to me at the moment is through Facebook. I'm Dandelion Tales 1, and I'm there all the time. I love Facebook. I'm trying to get into LinkedIn, but I'm just not there yet.
Brilliant. Okay, well, ladies, if you could just make sure that you have shared your links in the comments, in the chat, that will be fantastic. give it up for Pollie Rafferty, the amazing Pollie, who joined Mastermind yesterday. So welcome to the Mastermind, Pollie. We expect to see amazing, great things from you, as just as our other fellow Masterminders have progressed so much in the short time that we've been working together. But Pollie, amazing, absolutely amazing. I'm just looking forward to seeing what comes next for you. Very exciting.